All right. So my guy Jake asked, what would I do incoming? We'll just say athlete, right? Keep it very general. Now, the first thing you got to understand really is every session is an assessment. I don't know if you're seeing me on the camera or not. Hopefully. Every session is an assessment, right? So really, you got to understand, I think there's all this pressure put on coaches that you have to figure out their entire DNA code, in the assessment. You need to know everything about them and the trajectory for 4 years when you're doing an assessment. That's really not true. You just need a starting point. And to be honest, for most people, it's really, really easy. I can probably count on one hand the number of times I've come across somebody who wanted to start training, and they had just everything in place, really needed to dig deep to see what they needed to improve upon to improve their game or make them more injury resilient. It rarely happens. So, with my volleyball player, I was training her parents first, and they were like, okay, she's finally ready to start training here. Cool. Bring her in. And with kids in school, college or high school, it doesn't really matter. You just see, do they even have the basics? What does their body weight squat look like? Do they know how to squat? What are their mechanics? Hips, knees, ankles. Okay, have them do some single leg step ups, have them do some single leg hops. Can they even do that without falling over? Have them balance on one foot for a period of time. Do they know what a proper hinge pattern is? When they jump, is it all quads and low back, or do they recruit posterior chain? So movements. I'll never forget the story Andre told me about this parent who brought in these hockey players. He's Canadian. Brought in some hockey players, and they were all-stars on the ice, just amazing players. And so Andre was expecting, one thing in the gym, and they get to the gym, and they did not know how to move without skates on their feet. So really, he took these all-star players and just taught them proper movement. I think he said he had them doing spider crawls on the floor, and to learn the cross crawl pattern and whatnot. And it's like that a lot. I'm not going to name even the sport because it might make it easy to figure out who it is, but I had a professional athlete here, and we were about to do trap bar deadlifts, and I'm like, okay, going over the technique and bracing, and he goes, well, what's that? Literally, the guy made it to the professional league, and no coach along the way took the time to explain how to brace for an exercise. That's not a fault on that athlete. That's a fault on coaching along the way. So I think that's one of the biggest sort of I don't know what you're going to call it, smoke screen sort of facades in the industry, is that these coaches, these places, they'll get professional athletes, and in a 3-month turnaround, they've improved that athlete's game substantially. And so, you're left wondering, well, what secret program did they give them? What secret exercise, or, whatever it is, scientific periodization. I guarantee you 99% of the time, they taught them how to do a proper split squat, how to squat properly, probably strengthen their hamstrings, and that was 90% of their success. So, try not to get fooled by what you're seeing, what these guys are putting out there, because you hear it all the time, but it's so simple that we refuse to believe it. The basics, mastering the basics, is what champions do. They are so good at the basics that they look advanced, and it's not. People give up trying to master the basics because they get bored with it. They think they're good. Nobody's telling them the truth that they suck at it. Or they think that it's just too simple to be true, so they find something, they try to find that secret sauce, and that's not it. They're not creating a foundation. So anyways, getting back to my athlete, she comes in, she's a volleyball player. So what do? I check, obviously the major joints for a volleyball player, all the leg stuff, the lower body stuff. I test her movement, and lo and behold, like 99% of other cases, she's not good in any of them. She is now, so I can say it, right? So she's great at it now. And fantastic squat, way better jumping mechanics, knows a ton. She's going to be a superstar when she goes off to college. But when she came in, she could not do any of it. So, you got to remember this idea, and it's said a lot, but I'm going to say it here again. When you're dealing with an athlete, they are in the gym as a secondary objective. Their main objective is their sport. Okay, so you don't need to waste their time in the gym trying to get them good at their sport. You need to spend their time in the gym getting them strong and resilient to injury so that when they do play, they can push 100%. Right? They can give it all without worrying about injury. They know how to apply force and power, and that's your job as the strength coach. And you're not a sport-specific coach or whatever that is. That's elsewhere. So I say that to athletes up front all the time. They come in, they're like, I want a better swing, I want a better, whatever it is in their sport. Lots of little technical jargon there, and I say, cool. What we do in here will automatically make you better as long as you have a good technique coach, you have a good sports coach, but that's not my job here. It's not my job to learn how to pole vault and dissect it and try to instill some technique into my pole vaulters. My job is to watch them pole vault, understand the sport, what are the strength requirements, what are the major injuries, and then, make them stronger, make them more injury resilient. So, I kind of feel like I'm getting off tangent, but I feel like I'm also answering the question. When I get an athlete coming in, I just check movements. I check strength in what their main sport is. So again, volleyball player, definitely leg stuff. Pole vaulters, they do need leg because they got to run, and they need mobility in the hips, right? They need lots of mobility, but it's mainly an upper body dominant strength sport. So looking at can you do a pull-up? Can you do a push-up? Can you do a dip? All these other things like that. And again, chances are, most of the time, they can't. So if you just do the basics with these guys, they're gonna blow everybody else out of the water. And they do. It is so rare, I can't even think of an example right now, but it's so rare for a kid to train here for a period of time and they don't come in being like, I am now used as the good example in the weight room for cleans, squats, bench, whatever it is. The coaches use me. And I get reached out by these coaches, hey, keep doing what you're doing. It's really, really good. So I thought I was going to do something fancy here with this whiteboard. I guess I'm not. It's very simple. And I think if I try to make it sound advanced, I'm going to sound like every other coach out there online, trying to make it seem like, hey, you need to come take my course to, get good at this. I am doing a course in September, but you don't need to take it. In fact, don't make it your first course. I highly recommend against that. But if you've been in the game for a little bit, maybe I can help you piece some of these pieces together. But yeah, so again, sorry, trying to get back on track with my volleyball player. Checked her, she wasn't very good at that. So okay, very basic leg strengthening, hip hinging, teaching bracing. Workouts to start with, and then once those exercises did their job and they strengthened the joints, they taught proper movement patterns, then you build upon that, right? So let me see if I can think of an example. For almost everybody who starts here in their first lower body workout, they're going to do some sort of split squat. I can regress that exercise so that even a corpse could do it, okay? But somebody is going to be doing some kind of split squat in here. And why do we do a split squat? Because it isolates and simplifies the mechanics, in the lower limbs at least, of what a squat is. So in the second phase, you're probably going to be doing some kind of squat. Likely not a back squat, because there's a lot more upper body involvement and there's some mechanics you got to understand before I just throw you a bar on your back. But you're probably going to be doing some kind of squat. I don't know. Front rack hold, with a med ball, if you want to call it a goblet squat. You know, maybe even, I love my hack squat machine because it puts the entire body through the same sort of motion as a squat in a much safer way. I can put a reverse band on it and deload the knees in the bottom. So I've saved a lot of people from knee surgery by having that, and probably one of their first 3 phases that they do here, that split squat. And then going forward, now if I'm doing my job correctly, and if they're mentally here when they're here and not just physically here, now we're gonna do some sort of like main squat. So I'll say variation, and then main barbell back squat, right, in that 3rd phase. Like, this is super simplified, but honestly it goes like this 80 to 90% of the time. And along the way, I'm not just teaching them the exercise, right? I'm doing my job explaining to them, you know, when we do a split squat, I want you to feel the bottom of your feet. I want you to feel this in your glutes. I want you to feel this in the exercise. When we go to the squats, I start teaching them about breathing in, bracing, those kinds of mechanics there. You know, feel what you're feeling through your feet. What's your upper body doing? And then when we get to the main barbell back squat, I'm teaching them why that is called the king of all exercises. That's the name for that. I teach them why it's called that. I teach them how the squat is the gateway drug to all these other cool exercises they see people do. They understand why they're doing it for their sport, so that when they go back to their school and they play their sport, and you know, now they have to do, like, if she's got to jump up and spike that ball, you know, the squat mechanics in the gym are going through her head when she's jumping up, and she's like, wow, like, yeah, I can see how the squat is improving my game, because the more buy-in you have, the better results you have. So, you know, it's super simple. I guess if you understand how this all goes, if you haven't been in the game for a minute, if you don't understand like some of this basic stuff right here, I can see how this might seem advanced, but it's really, really not. One thing I try to teach coaches that I consult with, I teach them this Bruce Lee saying. Bruce Lee has a lot of great sayings I say in here. One of them was, when he was a beginner, a kick was just a kick. He looked at it, saw somebody do it, oh, I can do that, it's just a kick, right? And then he became an intermediate, and he was in martial arts for a few years, and this kick became 1,000 different things. There's all these cues, everything going on in the body, you know, what kind of kick for what kind of person and what kind of position they're in, you know, when to use it, when to not use it. But then, when he became a true master, a kick just became a kick. And it's kind of like that with this stuff as well. I'm not by any means saying I'm a master, right? But I think that I'm relating to the beginners that might see this and say that it looks really, really advanced. Or if you're looking at it, you haven't been in the game very long, and you just scoff at it, you're like, no, it's got to be something more than that, because that is just that. You know, you're kind of in that beginner stage. But anyways, Jake, you know, I made this based on your request. I hope that helps. If you guys got, you know, any specific questions, send them to me. If I feel like answering them, I will. If I've got the time, I will. But I definitely enjoy the feedback. And again, I made this because somebody asked me to. So hope that helps, and I hope you enjoy it.